On February 24, 2022, Vladimir Putin made arguably the most disastrous decision in Russia's history by launching an invasion of Ukraine, underestimating the challenge and expecting a swift victory within days or weeks that would see Ukraine collapse. However, his assumptions proved disastrously wrong, and more than 4 years later, he is only beginning to realize the magnitude of his mistake. Putin's actions have devastated Russia entirely, irreparably damaging its military reputation and causing immense internal damage, all for a territorial gain equating to just about 1% of Ukraine. While that figure might sound minimal, it represents the total extent of what Russia has managed to seize since the invasion began, despite sacrificing over 1.26 million of its own citizens in a conflict that shows no sign of resolution. To understand the significance of that 1% and its implications for Russia, it's important to revisit the events of February 24th, 2022, when Putin dispatched 200,000 troops, including many from Russia's most elite divisions, into Ukraine. This marked a catastrophic day for Ukraine as Russian forces launched a multi-directional offensive from the north, east, and south, supported by thousands of pieces of equipment and a coordinated air campaign involving dozens of aircraft and missiles. This initial phase, often referred to as the flash invasion, saw Putin prematurely confident that Kyiv would fall within 3 days and that Russia would secure control over Ukraine before the West could respond effectively. For a brief period, Russian forces made significant advances, pushing deep into Ukrainian territory and nearing Kyiv to within a few dozen miles, marking the most successful phase of the invasion for Putin. However, what Putin failed to anticipate was the resolute and strategic Ukrainian resistance, which capitalized on his overconfidence and countered Russia's advances by reclaiming key areas around Kyiv and eliminating Russian troops in the Kharkiv and Chernihiv regions. Ukrainian defenders also successfully held Odessa, preventing further Russian expansion. Despite Russia's initial territorial gains, most notably the occupation of Mariupol, much of the Donbas region, and parts of Zaporizhia, the overall campaign was a failure in Putin's eyes. Ukraine, expected to collapse within weeks, had survived the entirety of 2022, leaving Russia with only a modest foothold and laying the groundwork for a prolonged conflict marked by minimal territorial gains. By the end of 2022 and even earlier, leading military think tanks worldwide had already declared Putin's invasion a catastrophic failure. Russia had suffered approximately 109,000 casualties, killed or wounded, by the end of that first year. As early as April 2022, the Royal United Services Institute criticized Russia's invasion for its poor strategic planning and execution, highlighting glaring deficiencies in logistics, communication capabilities, and the unexpectedly high number of losses. By year's end, the Atlantic Council echoed these criticisms, with analyst Daniel Frieded summarizing the situation by stating that Putin's corrupt and deceitful system had hollowed out the Russian military and fostered widespread cynicism within Russian society. Although Russia had made some territorial advances, it had failed to crush Ukraine as intended. Furthermore, 2022 represented the peak of Russia's successes in this conflict. Subsequent years only saw negligible gains, amounting to a meager 1.4% of Ukraine's territory. We will delve deeper into this figure and its broader consequences for Russia in the following analysis. You might initially feel that something doesn't quite add up. The media reports that Russia currently controls about 20% of Ukraine, and this figure is accurate, give or take a percentage point. However, what these reports often overlook is that nearly all of these territorial gains happened either during the first year of the invasion, which we know was a failure, or in some cases even before Putin launched his full-scale attack. Take Crimea, for example. Russia illegally annexed the Crimean Peninsula back in 2014, catching Ukraine completely off guard and exploiting its unpreparedness to defend its land. The move that shocked the international community and led to widespread condemnation and sanctions against Russia. According to Durham University, Crimea accounts for just under 5% of Ukraine's territory, meaning that the recent advances from the invasion amount to roughly 15% of the country. Even at face value, these numbers are far less impressive than what Putin would hope to show after 4 years of war, highlighting just how misguided his decision was. Let's revisit the 1.4% figure to understand the more recent progress. United 24 Media provides a helpful summary of Russia's gain since the start of 2023. That year, Russia captured about 600 square kilometers, around 231 square miles, which represents a mere 0.1% of Ukraine's territory. To achieve these minimal gains, Russia deployed 253,000 soldiers, a massive military effort that yielded very little territorial advantage. In 2024, the situation improved somewhat, with Russia occupying approximately 3,500 kilometers, about 1,350 miles, equaling roughly 0.5 to 0.6% of Ukraine. So, while this was 5 times better than 2023 in terms of area gained, it came at an even greater cost. Around 431,000 Russian troops were lost in that year alone defending these gains, reflecting the steep human price of these small territorial acquisitions. Then came 2025, Russia's best year since 2022. But even then, Putin had little cause for celebration. While his military took about 15% of Ukraine in 2022, it managed only between 0.7% and 0.8% of the country in 2025, an area 20 times smaller than in the invasion's first year, amounting to around 500 kilometers, or about 1,737 miles. This advance also cost Russia another 418,000 soldiers, underscoring the brutal attrition the Russian forces have endured. Beyond the human toll, Putin's ambitions have devastated Russia itself. Stay with us, as we'll explore how in just a moment. To sum up, between early 2023 and the end of 2025, Russia has captured a total of just 8,600 square kilometers, about 3,320 miles, of Ukraine, equivalent to that 1.4% figure mentioned earlier. In doing so, Putin sacrificed 1,102,000 Russian soldiers, meaning that for every square mile gained, Russia lost nearly 332 soldiers. This is the harsh reality of burning your country to the ground for almost no tangible gain. If we zoom out, it's clear that it's not just soldiers who have been sacrificed. The entire Russian military has been severely weakened by the vast amounts of equipment lost. According to Ukraine's Ministry of Finance, since Putin launched his invasion, Russia has lost over 11,700 tanks, more than 24,000 armored vehicles, over 37,600 artillery systems, 600 air. The once feared Black Sea Fleet has also been withdrawn, with a third of it destroyed by Ukrainian missiles and drones. Over the past 3 years, Russia has gained virtually nothing of lasting value in Ukraine. Instead, Putin has only managed to demonstrate to the world that Russia's military power is in sharp decline. A decline that not only undermines Russia's strategic position, but also raises serious questions about the future stability and security of the region. The financial burden on Russia worsens dramatically when considering the enormous costs tied to Putin's unsuccessful campaign in Ukraine. Before diving deeper into this, if you're interested in this level of analysis, be sure to subscribe to the Military Show. It's widely known that Russia has drained billions from its public funds to support the invasion. But the story doesn't end there. There's a significant twist we'll explore shortly. For now, let's examine the official numbers. According to United 24 media, Russia's declared war budget has increased sharply each year. $12 billion in 2022, soaring to $109 in 2023, $149 billion in 2024, and an estimated $150 in 25. However, the Moscow Times disputes the 2025 figure, suggesting Russia actually spent $168 billion that year. Both sources agree, though, that spending for 2026 is projected to be between $161 and $167 billion. These are the official figures available, and they paint a picture of a conflict spiraling wildly out of Putin's control. From the invasion start through the end of 2026, Russia is expected to have poured roughly $677 into its military efforts, assuming United 24 media's data is accurate. While Russia might argue that not all this spending directly funds the invasion, the amount still dwarfs the under $80 initially allocated for the 2022 campaign. By 2026's end, Russia will have spent nearly 8.5 times its original invasion budget under the so-called special military operation. Between 2023 and 2025, Russia's military expenditure totaled around $48 billion, for only 1.4% of Ukraine's territory gained during that period. To put it in perspective, this equates to an extraordinary $122.89 million spent per square mile of territory officially captured in Ukraine. Now comes the twist. The official spending figures do not reflect the full extent of Russia's military expenditures. Since the invasion began, documented spending has exceeded $500 billion. But experts estimate hundreds of billions more in hidden costs remain unreported, including secret loans. In 2025 alone, United 24 media reports that such covert loans surpass $200 billion, effectively inflating Russia's defense spending for that year to approximately $350 billion. What initially looks like over $500 billion in total spending grows significantly once these undisclosed amounts are considered. Multiple sources have highlighted this discrepancy between reported and actual expenditures. For example, on February 5th, TVP World cited Germany's Foreign Intelligence Agency, which claimed that as much as 10% of Russia's GDP is now being funneled into the war effort, much of it through secret channels designed to bolster Russia's military capacity in anticipation of a possible conflict with NATO. Germany estimates Russia's 2025 war spending at over $250 billion, or about $294 billion if hidden expenditures are included, though it's unclear whether these figures account for the secret loans referenced by United 24 media. This suggests that Russia's actual war spending for 2025 alone could be close to $500 billion debt. Additionally, Craig Kennedy, writing in his Navigating Russia column on Substack, has exposed what he terms Russia's hidden war debt, explaining that Putin has been sustaining the invasion through off-budget debt, state-driven, clandestine financial schemes matching those identified by United 24 media. Taken together, these revelations highlight how Russia's military spending is far greater and more opaque than official figures indicate, underscoring the immense economic toll of the conflict and the lengths to which the Kremlin is going to maintain its military campaign. Kennedy points out a significant anomaly in Russia's corporate borrowing since 2022, amounting to a staggering $446 billion increase, nearly all of which has been funneled to companies directly supporting Russia's war effort, including weapons manufacture. Remarkably, the Russian state has been issuing these loans, often to itself, even as domestic interest rates soared to as high as 21%. This situation reveals that President Putin has effectively set Russia on a path toward financial collapse, not only due to official war expenditures, but also because of countless secretive loans made solely to sustain the invasion. According to Kennedy, this has burdened Russian banks with a large volume of risky corporate war loans, many of which could become worthless once hostilities cease and defense contracts are terminated. In total, well over $500 billion will have been officially spent by the end of 2025, with nearly another $500 billion in loans likely to unravel when the war concludes. This financial debacle threatens to devastate the Russian economy, which Putin has effectively ruined, all for a mere 1.4% territorial gain in Ukraine between 2023 and 2025. The situation is further compounded by factors we have yet to fully account for, such as the involvement of North Korea and Iran. Both nations have supplied Russia with substantial military equipment, and in North Korea's case, even thousands of soldiers, with reports indicating that as many as 14,000 troops were sent, 6,000 of whom have already perished. What remains unclear is how much Russia has spent acquiring this hardware and manpower. Payments have been made using a variety of means, including gold, food supplies, and even cryptocurrency transactions that likely occur off the books and thus evade inclusion in Russia's official military spending or defense company loans. There is also speculation that Russia may have bartered state secrets to obtain resources from these countries, especially given Iran and North Korea's ambitions to acquire nuclear weapons, which Russia possesses. It is not far-fetched to consider that Russia has exchanged some of its nuclear knowledge for soldiers and equipment from these allies. Indeed, Iranian press asserted in November 2025 that leaked documents suggest much of the 6.5 million munitions delivered by North Korea to Russia were compensated through Russian military technologies. Though it is difficult to assign a monetary value to such exchanges, one clear outcome is that Russia has sacrificed some of its leverage as one of the world's few nuclear powers in order to secure additional manpower and material. While the full extent of Russia's transfers to Iran and North Korea during the war remains unknown, some data points have emerged. Bank News estimates that North Korea earned about $20 billion from Russia for military support up to April 2025, with $10 billion worth of weapons sent by September 2025. Despite this, the deal is reportedly skewed in Russia's favor. Another source, Dailic, notes North Korea receives roughly $525 million annually from troop deployments alone, which, based on the reported 14,000 soldiers, averages about $37,500 per soldier. As for Iran, Middle East Monitor reported on February 22 that Iran signed a deal the previous December to supply $590 worth of missiles to Russia, with several prior agreements also seeing Iran furnish Russia with Shahed drones. Altogether, these transactions represent a vast amount of money, yet our understanding remains partial and incomplete. Much of Russia's military spending and corporate loan data likely underestimate the true cost of the conflict, now exceeding $1 trillion, placing an unprecedented financial strain on the country and its economy. United 24 media reports that Russia spends about $3 monthly on manpower alone, a staggering figure that underscores the relentless demand for human resources in the ongoing conflict. Each month, Russia reportedly loses around 30,000 soldiers in Ukraine, necessitating a constant and costly cycle of recruitment, training, and deployment to maintain frontline strength. The total financial burden associated with deceased soldiers is estimated at $100 billion, a figure driven by the combination of high wages, signing bonuses, and benefits offered to volunteers, costs that are all funded by the national budget and further exacerbate the fragility of Russia's already strained economy. Putin's mismanagement of resources and strategic priorities has significantly worsened the situation, as he channels massive funds into a war effort that has yielded minimal territorial gains. Only about 1.4% of Ukrainian territory captured over more than 3 years, highlighting the prolonged stagnation and futility of the conflict. The human and economic toll is severe and multifaceted. For example, the $300 million spent on ballistic missiles alone could have been invested in building a modern hospital, constructing a dozen schools, or providing housing for thousands of people displaced by the war. Similarly, the $250 million allocated for Shahed drones might have funded the establishment of 50 kindergartens or the procurement of over 1,000 ambulances, which would significantly improve public health infrastructure and benefit civilian populations. These costs represent just a fraction of the broader economic damage inflicted by the conflict. Russia continues to lag behind in critical sectors such as technology, finance, and investment, as the war drains resources and stifles growth. Despite the substantial financial input, Russia has made no major strategic advances and faces a severe labor shortage as thousands of soldiers die monthly, weakening the workforce and industrial capacity. A cipher brief notes that economic growth slowed to a mere 0.6% in 2025 and is projected to reach only 0.8% in 2026, reflecting Russia's failure to produce sufficient goods for domestic consumption or export, thereby undermining its global economic standing. No Russian firms rank among the top 100 technology companies worldwide, and the nation trails far behind leaders such as China and the United States in the space race, illustrating the long-term cost of prioritizing military conflict over innovation and development. Putin's invasion has resulted in over 1 million casualties with minimal territorial gain, in a conflict initially expected to be brief and decisive. With over $1 trillion spent and no end in sight, Russia is edging toward economic collapse, with neglected industries and public services, worsening living standards, and rising social unrest across the country. The war's catastrophic failure will leave a lasting legacy, with labor shortages and economic turmoil persisting long after Putin's tenure, potentially reshaping Russia's political and economic future in profound and unpredictable ways. Our video will further explore these impacts. For detailed analysis on the true costs of this special military operation, subscribe to the Military Show. Thank you for watching.